how does it jive that Dak Prescott is 15-1 to win MVP, minus 165 to win Comeback Player of the Year, but 500-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year when you have guys in front of him right now? For example, George Pickens at 80-1 has better odds to win Offensive Player of the Year than Dak Prescott.
This is Pod to the Futures with Mitch Moss and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
What's up, folks? Welcome in to another wonderful edition of Pod to the Futures. Jonathan Von Tobel. No Mitchell R. Moss today. He is off for unknown reasons. We are 8 episodes in. Couldn't make it to 10 before Mitch missed an episode. Yeah, I'm going to give him some crap for it. I'm sure he will listen to this and have a rebuttal for me when he comes back next weekend. But don't worry, coming up in a little bit, we'll have Adam Burke, managing editor, with us as we take a look at the college football playoffs, some national championship future odds, and college basketball as well. After Feast Week, we have a new favorite to win a national championship after a dominant performance during Thanksgiving week. But we started the National Football League today. It's hard not to. We get Monday Night Football that had all sorts of ramifications from an awards standpoint. And it's hard not to begin with, of course, the most important award in the NFL, Most Valuable Player. Drake Maye, after last night, now favored to win the award. That is coupled, of course, with a bad week for Matthew Stafford. But as we record this right now, Drake Maye minus 135 to win MVP over at DraftKings, the odds-on favorite at other shops as well. So let's go over this because I've been on record, both on Money Moves that I do with Stormy Bonatoni here on VSiN throughout the week, Monday through Friday, 11-1 Pacific, 2-4 Eastern, and here on this program where May, I believe, his status as favorite at certain times, here again today and throughout the year, is more a symptom of liability than it is true odds for him to win the award. And as he regains his status as odds-on favorite, I will reiterate that once more. So let's talk about what we just saw this last week, and let's tie it into these bodies of work and where we're at right now and how we're going to play this. So first off, we'll get the positive out of the way. May last night, pretty solid performance. 24-31, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He runs the ball 6 times for 12 yards. New England wins the game 33-15. Now, I don't think his ascension to odds-on favorite once again is really about him. It's about what Matthew Stafford just did over the weekend against Carolina. Stafford and the Rams go out there on the road. Stafford puts together his worst performance of the season. 18-28, 243, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a lost fumble. One of those interceptions being returned for a touchdown. We can get into the nature of the interceptions and whatnot, but my first question, as I look at this right now, and tweet us at me, JVT, at Mitch Moss Radio, is the race so tight that one bad performance from Matthew Stafford knocks him down this far? Remember, going into the weekend, some shops had him as over a $2 favorite to win the award, and after one bad performance, he slips now to a plus price. And keep in mind, a couple of things. The first interception of the game for Stafford, a tip ball at the line of scrimmage, subsequently picked off in the end zone, that ended a streak of 28 touchdown passes without an interception. That is a league record, which passed Tom Brady's previous mark by 3 touchdowns. Stafford's new record is 28, and the previous record, Tom Brady, was at 25. Are we this fickle? And was this race so tight that Matthew Stafford was in the midst of a record-breaking pace at which he was throwing touchdowns to no interceptions, and in that game extends that streak while also performing poorly? It was so tight that despite a record-breaking pace, Stafford now slips to the underdog role for most valuable player. It's not something I really buy, and we've talked about this a lot on this program, so I figured let's dive in. We still have about 4 games left, depending on what you're looking at here in terms of the schedule. But diving into their resumes, I think paints the picture even more in favor of Stafford, and it's not something I understand when it comes to Maye's status as the favorite right now. So let's compare and contrast. Now, I'll tell you right now, we like to break up all of these award races into different categories, who wins out, how many categories, whatever it is. I have a few categories that I've used to sort out the resume. You would probably add a few. You would probably remove a few. This is the way that I've decided to do it, and this is part of the debate. But again, I think there's a lot of things that move in Stafford's favor, which we'll get to here And I would also say this, because I'll get this out of the way. I'm going to add Matthew Stafford to win most valuable player this week. I have said this a lot. I think in the sports betting space, in the sports content betting space, a lot of what we do when it comes to awards is really just stumping for what you think your award should win. Okay, I think we're guilty of it at the Vegas Stats and Information Network. We are not free of that burden in any way, shape, or form. I'm pretty sure I've done it. I try my best to keep a level head with some of these awards and things that I have. One of my favorites that I did it on purpose, but the biggest heel turn that I've had was it 2 years ago when Emmanuel Quickly was up for Sixth Man of the Year, and I spent like a month talking about how it was ridiculous that people thought he should win the award, and then in my account from October, I found an Emmanuel Quickly Sixth Man of the Year ticket for 45-1, and the next day I went on the air and said that he's probably the best candidate to win Sixth Man of the Year. Now, that was satire, as that was probably a reflection on how we handle these things. But I do try to keep this level-headed, and I don't want these pods to turn into that. So I want that out there. I'm going to bet Matthew Stafford to win most valuable player. With that in mind, the pros for Drake Maye's resume. He's completed 71.5% of his passes. He's averaging 8.8 yards per attempt, and every category I'm going to list off to you are the categories in which he bests Matthew Stafford. 3,412 passing yards, tops in the league. Expected points added and completion percentage over expected, 0.204. That leads the National Football League as well. For Stafford, 32 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, a turnover-worthy play rate of 2.2%, which is the best in the NFL, PFF passing grade of 92.2, success rate 53.1%. And I go back to, and we'll see how voters decide to vote for this, but if we're breaking them down, there is an advanced metric in favor of Drake Maye. There's an advanced metric in favor of Matthew Stafford. But if we get to the just most basic statistics, the market is telling you that as the odds-on favorite right now, higher completion percentage, higher yards per attempt, and more passing yards is more valuable than having 32 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So again, 9 more touchdowns, 2 fewer interceptions, and a much lower rate of putting the ball in danger. To me, I just don't buy it. And then we get to the other aspects of what this race has come down to. Drake Maye, and we know all about the schedule, but let's put some meat on the bone, if you will, with what we talk about, because we, as I have a tendency, not to get too meta again about reflection of sports betting commentary, we just kind of say things without giving context to them. And I think a lot of people watching and listening to this probably understand what the context is. But we always talk about, hey, the Drake Maye and the Patriots, easy schedule. Strength of opponent schedule in its entirety this year, Drake Maye and the New England Patriots, a 369 win percentage. Matthew Stafford, 517. So he is doing this, Stafford, again, 9 more touchdown passes, 2 fewer interceptions, better rate of turnover-worthy plays. He is doing this against much tougher competition. About opposing defenses, this is, I think, the one that really takes the cake so far. Of the 13 games Drake Maye has played, he's played 9 against a defense which ranked 22nd or lower in expected points added per play. 9 of the 13. He has faced 1 top 10 defense so far this year. That would be Cleveland. He has faced 2 top 15 defenses if you add in the New Orleans Saints. So this has been a schedule in which Drake Maye has been great. But this is one of the easiest schedules you're ever going to see for a quarterback. And yet some of the more important numbers, again, touchdowns, interceptions, worse than what Stafford has put up against a schedule that is 517 in terms of strength of opponent record. And we'll boil it down to this: average opposing defensive ranking in terms of expected points added per play. Again, it's just a basic metric to tell you exactly how tough the competition has been. Stafford, 14.75. Drake Maye, 21.15. Stafford has faced 4 top 10 defenses: Houston, Seattle, Jacksonville, and Philly. He's faced 7 top 15 defenses: Indiana, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay, the others that we include in there. And I do wonder, and I believe this probably will be the case, whether or not some of these voters will take into account that Drake Maye has played pretty much nobody when it comes to opposing defenses. And the fact that he has completed more passes and averaged more yards per attempt and thrown for more yards does not equate to value against a very easy schedule when you look at the other guy who has completed 66% of his passes, thrown for 32 touchdowns, could likely surpass 40 by the time we get to the end of the year, and less than 10 interceptions. It's panning out to be for me. I don't understand what the conversation is right now, at least in terms of making these odds. There's still plenty of runway for May to win this award for him. But if we're talking about truly pricing this market right now, even after last week, I don't get why we would make Drake Maye the odds-on favorite after what we just watched and what we have been watching from Matthew Stafford so far this year. So we'll see if maybe that's going to be something that comes to fruition. Maybe I'm absolutely wrong. Maybe May's going to run away with this. But I am willing, because we talk about markets all the time, and I do think that there is a tendency to just view betting markets as this end-all, be-all. They're accurate. They know what they're doing. This is it. And I think in certain instances, that's correct. I think when you look at the way that teams are priced every day, betting spreads, power ratings in the market, things like that, those, as the season goes along, get tighter and tighter, and it is a pretty solid representation of how these teams should be measured. But in awards, where there's a human element of voters who have no idea what they're thinking or how they're thinking or what they're evaluating, I'm sorry, I don't buy that these markets are accurate. We have example after example after example of long shot guy coming in to win an award. Obviously, Joe Flacco a couple of years ago to win Most Improved Player is one of those, or Comeback Player of the Year. I always reference NL Rookie of the Year, the year that Paul Skeens won it, when Jackson Merrill all of a sudden became a minus 1,000 favorite to win the award, and you had people saying, well, he's going to win it. Market says so. Didn't even come close. Had 7 first-place votes. And I'm really going to push back on the thought that Drake Maye is the most likely MVP at this point right now. I'm sorry, one game doesn't do it. And the fact that your market is so soft that a dude that was over $2 to win an award after one performance is now the underdog to do it, I think that we're probably in a position where we can push back on how the market is rating this race, and among some others. You know, for example, we're going to talk to Adam Burke coming up a little bit, as I mentioned. He's a big Cleveland Browns fan. We're big Carson-esque guys on this show, as many of you know. Carson Schwessinger, the rookie linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, who is now about a minus 600 favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Do I think that he is that big of a favorite to win this award? Absolutely not. And how could you accurately say that that's the case? So we'll have to talk about that at some point, maybe when Mitch comes back next week, when we talk about how we're going to handle these certain things. So to that point, I want to take a break here. When we come back, I'm going to expand on another aspect of this. We have an award that we could win, or that could be won. A guy is 500 to 1 to win the award. And I will tell you right now, there is no way in hell his odds should be that minuscule to win an award.
Welcome back to Pod to the Futures, part of the VSiN Podcast Network.
So I'm probably barking up the wrong tree on this next one. It's 500 to 1. Again, I don't think the market's entirely accurate when it comes to awards, so there's probably some wiggle room here. To that point, though, that could also mean that I'm so wrong that this should maybe be 1,000 to 1. So it could go, what is it in polling? Margin of error. So maybe there's a margin of error that goes in the other direction with my theory that awards markets aren't accurately priced. So with that, we dive into it. Let's talk a little Offensive Player of the Year. So Jonathan Taylor's grip on Offensive Player of the Year is slipping, and it's slipping in a very big way. And I'll pat ourselves on the back here on Pod to the Futures for just a brief moment, in that we had talked about heading into the Colts bye week, if there was going to be a time to start shorting the Indianapolis Colts and their awards, whether it was Shane Steichen to win Coach of the Year, whether it was Jonathan Taylor to win Offensive Player of the Year, the time was now, because they were about to enter a portion of their schedule that was very, very tough. And sure enough, they've lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. They've lost to the Houston Texans. The offense over the last 3 games has been middling at best. Stephen Holder had a good tweet about it. They're middle of the pack in expected points added per play. They're middle of the pack in success rate. Some of it ties into the injury to Daniel Jones. Some of it ties into just stiffer competition because the early portion of their schedule was so easy at this point right now. But Jonathan Taylor, still right now, we should note, let me double check, unless the odds have shifted in the last couple of minutes since I've looked at them. We always want this accurate. Still the favorite right now to an Offensive Player of the Year at minus 125. Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we'll get to, is even money. And the way this market is priced, this is what drives me nuts. And this is where we're going to get to what I'm talking about here. Your third choice on the board is Christian McCaffrey at 14-1. Christian McCaffrey, who is the second choice on the board to win comeback player of the year. Dak Prescott, now your odds-on favorite at minus 165. This is where I get into the award that I'm really curious about right now. And honestly, I wish Mitch was here so I could actually talk to somebody about this, get some thoughts, bounce back and forth. Maybe Adam will have something on me here because, I like to hear that maybe I'm not thinking of something enough. And Mitch did have one rebuttal when I talked to him yesterday after the show. So I'll mention that here. Dak Prescott, a fellow offensive player for Christian McCaffrey, is minus 165 to win comeback player of the year. And yet he is 500-1 to win offensive player of the year. He plays offense. Feel like maybe you should probably be priced a little bit differently. Dak has thrown, I should put it that way, better English, for 3,261 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He leads the league, if you're looking at QBR right now, 75.3. He's right behind Drake Maye in terms of passing yards, just under 200 yards. Obviously ahead of him in terms of touchdown passes right now at this point. And completion percentage right behind May as well, 69.3%. So you're going to tell me that Dak, and we'll include the 2 rushing touchdowns that he has. So he's accounted for 27 touchdowns. His team could still win the division. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. In fact, he's at least second best in 2 key categories right now. He, according to the market, is on the fringes of the MVP race, but not entirely, 15-1. Just from a pricing standpoint, how does it jive that Dak Prescott is 15-1 to win MVP, minus 165 to win comeback player of the year, but 500-1 to win offensive player of the year? When you have guys in front of him right now, for example, George Pickens at 80-1 has better odds to win offensive player of the year than Dak Prescott. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, all these guys, Derrick Henry. I don't understand why some of these players, Daniel Jones at 250-1, he's got like maybe a 2-1 touchdown to interception ratio at this point right now. On Sunday, he threw a couple, so I think it's a little bit positive. But at one point, we're talking about a dude that had 15 touchdowns and 7 interceptions and wasn't really doing that much for the Colts in terms of raising their ceiling, we'll put it that way, or accelerating the car if you want to keep it, because I keep using the analogy with Daniel Jones that you just put him in the Ferrari and let off the gas and then go ahead and idle and we'll be fine. But at 500-1, do we think that he's really Dak Prescott not being considered to win Offensive Player of the Year? He's not going to win MVP, according to the market. He's probably going to win comeback, but why are you then just tied down to winning comeback player of the year? And for those maybe who are screaming at me, quarterbacks don't win it, you would be right to an extent. Since 2019, we have had a skill position player win offensive player of the year. Michael Thomas won it in 2019, Derrick Henry in 2020, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson in 21 and 22, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley in 23 and 24. So those, of course, we're talking since 2019, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, running back, running back. However, Patrick Mahomes, when he won MVP, also won it in 2018. Matt Ryan, Cam Newton both won it in 2016 and 2015. Peyton Manning in 2013. Tom Brady and Drew Brees in 2010 and 2011, respectively. I can go down the list. By the way, Tom Brady and Drew Brees also won it back-to-back in 2007, 2008. You get the point here. There's a precedent for guys to win an Offensive Player of the Year if you're a quarterback. So, again, I mean, this is one of those things with awards. I'm probably going to grab 500-1. The realistic chance is that it's higher, but he's not going to win it. But I just think if you really have a ballot and you're evaluating each and every single one of these awards, why would the running back that is in contention for comeback player of the year because of his strong offensive season be 16-1 and have those odds to win the award of offensive player, but not the quarterback at which he is an underdog to win comeback player of the year against? It just doesn't jive with me. Now, maybe he just goes on to an MVP. Having said that, as we have seen, when Patrick Mahomes won Offensive Player of the Year, guess what he won? He won Offensive Player of the Year. We see it all the time. When Matt Ryan won Most Valuable Player of the Year, guess what he won? He won Offensive Player of the Year. You see where I'm going with this. When he won Most Valuable Player, Cam Newton, guess what he won as well? Offensive Player of the Year. So if you're going to tell me that, well, Dak isn't in it because he could probably win NFL MVP, I would tell you, you're probably right. He could win NFL MVP. That also means that he could win Offensive Player of the Year because as we have seen with these quarterbacks, when they win Offensive Player of the Year, it's hand in hand with winning Most Valuable Player. And I'll do the other example, Peyton Manning in 2013. When he won it, guess what? He won Most Valuable Player. So winning MVP does not dispel him, Dak Prescott, from winning Offensive Player of the Year. So all of this being said, I just think that 500 to 1 is way too long for Dak. It makes too much sense that would be in contention to be considered the best offensive player in the NFL. And that was Mitch's rebuttal, by the way. We talked about this quickly after the show, and I mentioned, how are we not looking at him for Offensive Player of the Year? We should talk about it in the show. And he told me, well, what if he wins MVP? Well, this is the rebuttal to that. Sure. And he can win both. So Dak at 500 to 1, definitely worth throwing a little bit of piece of money on this point right now. I think he's going to be really live to do so. All right, let's take our break here. When we come back, special guest Adam Burke, a ray of sunshine. Can't wait to talk to him, get his thoughts on the NFL. I can't wait to ask him about who his highest power-rated team in the AFC is at this point, and what do we do in college hoops with a new favorite at the top of the board.
Welcome back to Pod to the Futures, part of the VSiN Podcast Network.
All right, welcome in our special guest for the week. Mitch Moss could not be bothered to show up this week, so Adam Burke has decided to stick in. Look at that. I already got the smile at him first go. Managing editor, VSiN.com, at Skating Tripods up on X. Adam, what's going on? I'm going to open up, because you're very good at this, the obligatory tease to the website. What do we got going on the site? Because there is a ton of content up there. We do futures, but there's a lot of other content on a daily basis up at VSiN.com.
Yes, sir. First of all, you're lucky I'm not busy or anything to be able to jump on the show with you here and do this. But yeah, our Black Friday special is the best special that we offer throughout the course of the year. $60 gets you an all-access pass from when you sign up through May 1st. So obviously that'll include the Super Bowl. That'll include March Madness. That'll include everything that we do in terms of getting ready for the Major League Baseball season. A good chunk of the NBA and NHL playoffs, at least the early part of those. But, then, of course, when we get into the summer, we get our NFL and college football betting guides. So we want you to sign up again for that. But, yeah, man, I'll tell you what, it's a great time of year right now. I know we don't have Major League Baseball, but we have all the other sports going on. College football playoff betting guide comes out next Thursday, December 11th. So looking forward to that once we get this weekend settled with the conference championship games. And then, of course, the college football playoff bracket. But yeah, that $60 Black Friday special, man, it's the best one that we offer, and I think everyone should take advantage of it.
I don't think our bosses like that we make the joke, but I will. They're not watching. They're not listening. If you pay full price for a VSiN sub, what do you do?
Right.
I mean, we offer so many different specials that you should be able to make your way through the year relatively easily. So check it out at VSiN.com. All right, so you mentioned the college football playoff. That's where I wanted to start. It is Tuesday. We'll get the rankings again today. There's not going to be anything really crazy in the rankings this week. We didn't get any chaos, so I think it's a safe space to kind of project forward post-championship week. So what I wanted to start with here, because I wanted to go with the yes-no playoff markets and some of these teams. So I'm going to give to you my locks. I believe these are teams that are locked into the college football playoff. No matter what transpires over the next 7 days, these will be college football playoff teams. You can quibble with the seed wherever you want, but they should be in. Okay, so these are my locks. Ohio State, my projected Big Ten champ. They're favored to win the game, whatever. Indiana as an at-large. Georgia, projected SEC champ. Texas A&M as an at-large. Texas Tech, the projected Big 12 champ. And then the rest at-large is Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Let's start there. I have been saying Alabama is the lock because the committee has told us in years past, and evidence, by the way, has been there, that the conference championship game does not hurt your resume if you lose in the conference championship game. So we'll start with Alabama. Would you consider the Crimson Tide locked into the college football playoff? Because whether or not they are is very important for the next step in my experiment.
Well, I mean, look, if they don't win, if they don't win the SEC championship game, they're going to be the only team with 3 losses that would potentially be in the field. So is that something that's going to hold them back? I think there's a possibility that it could be, but this is a TV show, right? I mean, this is not about the athletes necessarily. This is not about the resumes. You can manipulate data however you want to manipulate it. So I think because they want Alabama to be in the college football playoff, then I think they'll find a way to do it. I personally have Alabama favored in the SEC title game by 0.5 point, so I kind of like them in that game anyway. But I do think that the committee will probably find a way to get them in, especially when you consider the fact that they did lose to Oklahoma, but they completely dominated the box score in that game. They just happened to have a long pick six that was a big swing in that one.
Yeah, so like the simplistic way I boiled it down to is I don't think there's any way the committee would leave out the SEC runner-up.
Right.
Like 3 losses be damned. I don't think that is a realistic scenario that ultimately happens. And like you said, I mean, if they win, all bets are off. We're fine in terms of what this is. So the reason why this matters in terms of Alabama being in is then this is the trickle-down effect. Then we get to the Big 12. Then this is Stormy and I brought this up, and I want to say we were one of the first to bring this up last week. If in the Big 12 BYU pulls off the upset, I will say it right now. How is Notre Dame in this field? Because if BYU wins, Texas Tech should be a lock. They are in. A loss in the conference championship game will not and should not knock them out. The resume is great. Again, rolling with the premise that the conference championship games will not hurt your resume. Losing and finishing as the runner-up in the Big 12, I think that's a bid stealer, and you're going to get 2 Big 12 teams in. And if you're there, then you still have your Big 12, your ACC or your other Group of 5, which we'll talk about because we're going to have one Group of 5 team in. But either way, the linchpin then becomes, if BYU wins the Big 12, Adam, why are we not talking more about Notre Dame being out?
Well, if BYU wins, I mean, I guess theoretically, right, it becomes Notre Dame versus Alabama. So then the committee is going to have that decision to make, where Notre Dame was the national runner-up last year and a team that has completely dominated everybody since they lost to Miami and Texas A&M early on in the season. I will say this. I think if BYU beats Texas Tech is out. Because,
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, their best win is Utah on the road, right? And that was a very close game until the fourth quarter where they really took that one over. Other than that, I mean, they would kind of counterfeit their own win over BYU if they were to lose to BYU now in this one, especially with how much they kind of dominated that first game against BYU. Texas Tech doesn't have a lot of good wins to me. They have a lot of good wins in terms of the score, in terms of game control, stuff like that. But the Big 12 is not a very good conference. And I think that if they lose to BYU after that being their second best win of the regular season, I think it should knock them out. I don't know that it will, but I think that it should. I think if you lose as a 2-touchdown favorite in your conference championship game against a team that's your second best win of the regular season, you're not a playoff team. So we'll see. But again, if you have the opportunity, I think if you're the selection committee to put both Alabama and Notre Dame in over Texas Tech, to get 2 big-time national brands over a team from Lubbock, Texas, I think you do it. So I think Texas Tech is out if they lose to BYU. They're not going to, probably, but I think they should be out, and I think you could make a case for it.
See, this is why I like to talk to people about these sort of things, because I had not thought of, because again, I'm just, and this is foolish on my part, I'm just rolling with the premise that the committee is sticking to their word that the conference championships, like you should not get docked for making a conference championship game. But they've gone back on their word 1,000 times on different things. So I think it makes a ton of sense. And to tie this in for our audience of like, okay, betting odds, whatever, the yes, no that I've seen for Notre Dame, the no to make the playoff is 3-1. I would say it's very heavily tied to BYU winning the Big 12. So take 4-1 on BYU maybe instead of, right, 4-1 money line, I say, in the Big 12 championship game, instead of betting just the no on Notre Dame, because I do think that's what they need to miss out on the playoff. And like you said, if Alabama and BYU both win, then it's pretty much going to be not anarchy, but it's going to be pretty tough, I think, for Notre Dame. Side note, what's going to ultimately be hilarious.
Well, I was going to say, along those same lines, right? If you're looking at DraftKings numbers specifically, Virginia is minus 160, Virginia is minus 166 on the money line against Duke. James Madison to not make the playoff is minus 160. Like, it's only 6 cents, but every cent matters when you talk about betting. So again, look around, shop around, 4 different ways of attacking these things, which I'm sure you guys talk about all the time with this being a futures podcast. But like the only way James Madison has a chance to get in is if Duke beats Virginia. So, Virginia money line is more expensive than James Madison to miss the playoff.
So I'm glad you brought this up, because this is the next place I was going to go. Are we sure if we get the doomsday scenario of Duke winning the ACC and we start to walk down the path of, hey, 2 Group of 5 teams might make it into this thing, are we sure that James Madison would get in over UNLV if they beat Boise State. Now, you could speak to this better because you have a better sense of the college landscape and things. But I'm assuming that in this scenario, it has to be UNLV, considering they'd be an 11-win team with a loss, 2 losses, but an avenge, if you will, of one of their losses being against Boise State in the Mountain West Championship game. And the reason why I bring this up is the committee at every turn has told us we don't respect the Sun Belt. James Madison has not been ranked. They don't care. They don't want to put them in. And would they view UNLV with a conference championship and a win over Boise State better than what James Madison has on their resume? It's just a thought because UNLV's 50-1 to make the college football playoff. And I was just thinking about this in my head where, we haven't really got an idea of where the committee ranks this James Madison team because they don't give us rankings outside of the top 25. They just tell us, oh, hey, like the one time when we got the group of 5 team, they just put them in. They were like, this is the next team up. And that was it. So are we sure that a 1-loss JMU would be ahead of a 2-loss UNLV if the Rebels were to go out to Boise and win that thing?
Well, it's like I said, right? I mean, you can manipulate data however you want to. So when you look at Sagarin, and I think Sagarin is a big part of the equation here for the College Football Playoff Committee, James Madison's a top 30 team. They're number 28, and their strength of schedule is higher than UNLV's right now. And UNLV is ranked 63rd. Now, of course, the strength of schedule will change a little bit because Boise State is a much bigger game than Troy. So that's something that could potentially help UNLV here in this situation. But I think it would be James Madison over UNLV. You could make a case, certainly, that UNLV does deserve it, having avenged one of their losses. But, I think they're going to take the 1-loss team over the 2-loss team in this situation because they're just going to say, look, James Madison, I mean, they are a top 30 team for Sagarin. They are ranked much, much higher than UNLV is. So I think that's the route that they would go. Now, of course, there is a discussion to be had of, well, do you take the team from the far bigger market in Las Vegas, where maybe it drums up a lot more interest, stuff like that? Because I think that those, non-football things are definitely very important to the playoff committee. Also, I think it's kind of interesting that, Chris Ault is on the playoff committee. So is he maybe somebody who kind of stumps for the Mountain West? Or, if not, then, does that kind of tell us what the committee thinks of the Mountain West without Ashton Genty going forward? So I think it's a fair question to ask, but I do think it would be JMU over UNLV.
Adam Burke with us again, managing editor of VSiN.com. In for Mitch Moss as we're discussing the CFP, the playoff odds, and who should bet in that realm. All right, so let's move on from this to ask you, because I know a lot of the times, and I tend to do this in the NBA postseason, I think it is accurate in terms of, hey, once the bracket's set or once we're here, there's probably not a lot of juice left in these futures odds in terms of value. Having said that, 2 teams really do stick out to me. Georgia and Texas Tech at their respective odds. I feel like we're undervaluing these 2 teams. I mean, Georgia, the way that they're peaking, and I get it. Charlotte, look, you don't really care. They don't cover that number. Kirby's like, 0-14. ATS is like a 30-plus point favorite, whatever the number is at this point right now. And then the Georgia Tech game, they've really had nothing to play for the last 2 weeks. And then Texas Tech's defensive line looks like one of the best in the country. Am I missing something here? Where do you rate these 2 teams? Because I think that there is some value in both of these teams to win a national championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, right? I mean, you can talk about Texas Tech, and I referenced Sagarin, and maybe this is something that would help Texas Tech's case. They're number 5 in Sagarin's rankings here, behind Ohio State, Notre Dame, Indiana, and Oregon. If I was to look at teams outside, I mean, I think it's going to be very, very hard. This is not biased. It's going to be really hard for anybody to beat Ohio State. I mean, just with how good they are defensively, the way that Julian Sand makes smart decisions, takes good care of the football. I think Notre Dame can be the team that can go out there and win the college football playoff at a decent price. The problem is we don't even know if they're going to get in. So that's the difficult thing with backing the Fighting Irish, is they have to get through this first step first. And then, probably being one of the last teams to get in, maybe have to go play a road game in the first round, something like that. But I think from a talent standpoint, I think Notre Dame is probably the closest to those top teams in the nation. I do agree with you. I think Georgia is a team that could beat Ohio State. They certainly have enough talent to do it. They have enough talent in the secondary to kind of slow down Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Because Texas Tech can win in the trenches, I get what you're saying. I just don't know if they're efficient enough on offense against better defensive teams, because they don't play a whole lot of good defenses in the Big 12.
Will Baron Morton finish a game?
Also that. Yeah, there's also that question too. There's only so many rushing touchdowns that Jacob Rodriguez can get. I think Notre Dame is probably the second best team in the playoff if they make it. But again, they have to make it. So I don't know if there's a good investment to be had there. But I think Georgia is a team I think worth looking at. But look, if you gave me, and I realize Oregon is in the field, if you give me 10-1 on both Oregon and Notre Dame, even with not knowing if Notre Dame is going to be in the field, I'm taking Notre Dame if I have to take one of those two teams.
Yeah, out of curiosity, and this is kind of a vague question, but it does make some sense to an extent. How do I phrase this? How much easier, and you don't have to put a number on this, and this is kind of like a theoretical conversation, but if we get 2 group of 5 teams in, depending on where they're seated, I mean, how much easier does a certain path become for some of these teams? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we get, I get, these American teams are good, they're fine. And then, God forbid you get James Madison in there. But we saw, like, we saw when Liberty made it in. There's a gap. These teams aren't particularly great when it comes to some of these national powers. I mean, we're talking about 2, I don't want to call them, free cards and bingo or free spots. Whoever they face in that first round, both of those teams, I mean, we're talking about higher probability of making it to the next round and making a run in the college football playoff. Yeah,
I mean, does this set up for some team like Penn State's draw last year, where, Penn State had a really, really favorable draw? They took advantage of it early on, and then, of course, weren't able to in the game against Notre Dame. But, yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those things where I do think that, somebody's path will certainly be easier. I'm personally, if I'm one of the teams who's in the playoff, I'm rooting for Tulane, because while Tulane is good, and I realize they're, a dog at home here in North Texas can play such a high variance style of football because of how they can score that you could lose that game 48-45 or something ridiculous, like that. So I'm rooting for Tulane if I'm one of the teams that's going to be one of the at-larges and have to play the American Conference team. Just because, like I said, I think North Texas can play this super, super high variance, up and down, high possession type of game. That being said, like, they're not going to get enough stops probably. So yeah, the path is definitely going to be a little bit easier for somebody here as this thing's kind of shaking out. So you think about Ohio State and Indiana, right? I mean, is there an actual benefit to being the number 1 seed where you may end up playing an Alabama or a Notre Dame or something like that, in that first game that you play off of the bye? So I think it's kind of really interesting to see how that whole thing's going to play out.
All right, so we have 2 things, very personal stories, very personal connections to Adam here on this pod. We're going to get to one on the other side, but before we do that, I do have to recount a very, I think, famous story now in the lore of the Vegas Stats and Information Network and my friendship and relationship with Adam Burke. We're coming up on an anniversary of you and I believe Stormy Bonatoni's husband, Chris, and some others up at the overhang watching Ohio State and Tennessee. And I looked at you and I told you, what's going to happen. Ryan Day is going to win a national championship and you're going to be stuck with him. And you said, no. And to some extent, you said, God, no. Well, here we are a year later. Not only are your boys the defending champs, they look like the favorite, as you mentioned, and a good favorite at that to win this thing. How are we feeling?
Yeah, this kind of feels like UConn in their back-to-back, March Madness runs. Look, you know what? I think that Ryan Day had an epiphany. He had his, as they say, come to Jesus moment after they lost to Michigan again last year. And maybe they beat Michigan if Will Howard's not concussed, because he certainly didn't look right in that game. But I don't know what happened. I don't know what Caleb Downs and some of the other leaders in that team said to him, but like, they rolled through the playoff until they got to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame gave them a bit of a game. But it just changed everything for Ryan Day. Like, he wasn't intimidated going into the Michigan game of trying to keep up with what Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer did in the standards of the program. I guess sometimes, whatever the cliche is, you need the setback for the comeback or whatever you want to call it. Well, he had 3 setbacks, then finally, really 4, I guess, then had a comeback. And now they were free and easy in that game against Michigan. It's a different Ryan Day than I've ever seen here before. And I'll admit, man, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong about Ryan Day. Like, you have to beat Michigan or you have to win a title. And this year they should hopefully do both. I mean, last year, finally winning the title, like, I don't know if it was just a weight off of his shoulders or something, but he's a different dude, man. And it's been fun to watch.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to keep those Cleveland ties alive. We'll tell you why this is a very pro-Cleveland show. Get into a little college hoops as well.
Welcome back to Pod to the Futures, part of the VSiN Podcast Network.
Adam Burke still here, managing editor, VSiN.com. He has no idea what I mean. I did send him notes prior, but he has no idea what I mean when I say that the Pod to the Futures is a very pro Cleveland Browns show. Mitch Moss and I share a futures play involving your Cleveland Browns. Would you fancy a guess as to what that would be?
Fewest wins?
No. It involves an individual player.
Myles Garrett, defensive player of the year?
No.
All right, I give
We
up.
have Carson Schlesinger to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I've got him at 18-1 to win it. I think Mitch has got something in the same range, if I remember correctly. Will Hill shares a wager on it as well. But the blonde-haired, I assume blue-eyed, former UCLA Bruin has been lighting it up. He's been stacking tackles left and right. I don't know, and this is what I wanted to bring this up for was, first off, you're a Browns guy for our audience that doesn't know. But the other is, he is minus 600 or minus 550, depending on where you look, to win this award right now. And I was going on a little bit of a rant before the show, or excuse me, at the beginning of the show. I don't think that these awards markets are accurate. Now, there's probably some degree of accuracy, as this reference you'll very much understand being a baseball guy, but I keep invoking Jackson Merrill, who was minus 1,000 at one point to win NL Rookie of the Year and received, I think, 7 first-place votes in totality eventually against Paul Skeens. I think we're really guessing at these. Do I believe that Schlesinger is the favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year? Yes. Do I believe he's minus 600 to do it? Probably not. But where do you stand on, because I know you don't bet him a ton, even if at all, because we've never really talked about it, but where do you stand on the accuracy of awards markets in any sport?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they are, and the way that they kind of account for that, the way they account for how inefficient that market is by jacking up the hold percentage on it, so they kind of cover themselves that way. Look, I think it's really hard when you're talking about individual awards to price them accurately because dudes are going to get hurt, right? I mean, Schlesinger running away with the award right now. The teams are going to run the football against the Browns, 65, 70, 75% of the time the rest of the way. So Schlesinger is probably going to have 160 plus tackles, something like that. He should be the heavy favorite for the award, but if he goes out there and gets hurt next week, well, then what? Right? Then the minus 600 means absolutely nothing. So there is a lot of guesswork involved in these awards markets. There's a lot of randomness too. But you guys are sitting on one hell of a ticket. And honestly, that dude was all over the field in that game against the 49ers, which I painfully watched. He's all over the field every single week. Like what a great find for a team that can't seem to put an offense together.
No, I mean, again, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know what it is in that front office. They continue to hit on defensive players. I mean, Schlesinger looks good. We know what McGarrett is. Denzel Ward's awesome. Like, there's so many guys in this.
Mason Graham looks really, really good now, too. So, yeah.
Yep. And, I mean, you have the greatest quarterback of all time now in Shedeur Sanders, so that should really help. We're a futures pod, but I'll just say your team laying 4 to anybody is a little bit of a stretch.
I already took Tennessee. Yeah, Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just got to get it out of the way. We're a futures pod. All right. I will ask you this before we move on to college basketball and wrap with that. This has been a conversation with Stormy and I like to ask people, I think it's a crapshoot. Take one, like I'll take this hat off and then we'll put a bunch of tickets in it and then you can pull one out. Who's the best team in the AFC according to your rankings?
I think it's New England. I mean, they're a top 10 team in both EPA per play on offense and defense. Can
I interrupt? How do you factor in strength of schedule? Because I talked about the MVP, again, tying into these awards markets. Every time Drake Maye or Matthew Stafford farts, like we change the odds to win MVP at this point right now. But if you look at strength of schedule, we're talking about opponent win percentage below 400, average defensive team ranking. We're talking about, by EPA standards, 21st on average for the opponents he's faced. Drake Maye, that is. How do you weight your rankings with the schedule that they have faced? Because the EPA metrics, you're right, are great, but it's been against some of the worst defenses in the NFL every single week.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. By the way, Matthew Stafford's a lot older, so he probably farts a lot more. So I'm sure that kind of alters the odds quite a bit.
He's only 3 years older than me, dude. I don't like this. Like we talk about him, he's so old, and I'm like, man, like I'm right behind him.
Every time I look at how old these guys are that are playing and all these things, I'm like, yeah, every single one of them's younger than me. It feels like. So I get where you're coming from with that. Look, I mean, it's a fair question, right? It's a fair argument. And look, I mean, they lost to Pittsburgh, one of the better teams that they've played, I guess. So it's definitely a fair argument to make, but still, I mean, Denver's defense is exceptional. There's no doubt about that. And obviously home field will be a big deal to them given the weather conditions of January and also the elevation. I would rather take Drake Maye than Bo Nix right now. So I think that's kind of the difference between the two teams. But I don't think that they're kind of 1A and 1B for me. I sort of feel like where I don't know if Baltimore ever gets its act together. I mean, they should be the clear favorite in the AFC, but who knows if that's going to happen.
Who's your highest power rated team overall?
It's the Rams. Despite what happened, in that game against Carolina, they're just so good on both sides of the ball. But Seattle is right there for me too, where I think people don't want to believe in Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold's doing really, really good with this team. He's got a great weapon in Jackson Smith and Jigba. We'll see if they get the running game going, but I think Seattle's extremely well coached too. Mike McDonald's been a great hire.
What's the, I don't want to reveal your entire secret formula, but what's the difference in a neutral for you between Seattle and LA?
It's about a point and a half, I would say.
That's what I thought, yeah. Man, I can't wait to watch them play again. That should be good. All right, let's get to college basketball in our last couple of minutes here. Now, you mostly follow the smaller conferences, but, for our audience's sake, I did have to ask you, and I prepared you for some of the big names. But I do think this is a big story, and I like to ask you because you have your own rankings, and I like the talk shop of how often you update, how do you update, what do you react to. So this is all a point to react to. Michigan's Feast Week was obviously incredible. We see this run out here in Las Vegas where they just mollywop every single one of the teams that they face. They go from about 20-1 to the favorite to win the national championship. I can buy that the market in college basketball was wrong on teams, right? Because it's different moving pieces, all these sort of things. To be so wrong that a team that was like 20-1 is now the favorite to win a national championship, it seems extreme. But what did you do with Michigan after that last week? Are they deserving to be the favorite to win the title?
Certainly deserving. Plus 750. No, I mean, there's, 25 plus games left of the regular season, and they still have to get into conference play and all that kind of thing. I mean, look, it is one of those things that's kind of difficult in college basketball, right? Like UConn and Kansas play tonight, right? As we're recording this on Tuesday. And whatever happens in that game is going to be so blown out of proportion because people are just now realizing that college basketball is actually happening. So when you get some of these big games, you get some of these, bigger margins of victory, stuff like that, you're going to get a lot of knee-jerk reactions. You're going to get a lot of the sports books moving on air because they're not really paying that much attention to college basketball right now. They just want to protect themselves so that they're not super overexposed when we get to the month of March. So yeah, I mean, it's deserving, right? And Michigan is the number one team, for me and number one team for a lot of the ranking sites that are out there. But that doesn't mean that they should be, single digits to win the national championship right now. A lot of basketball left to go. And there are other teams that will get better as we go forward where maybe Michigan's just clicking now, but maybe other teams, do start to play at or above that level as they get deeper into the season.
Okay, I like it. That's a very nuanced and safe answer, by the way. That's what I'm looking for here. Of course. You're supposed to come in and say, they're the best team. You should bet them now at plus 750. They're going to smoke everybody. Adrian Stojakovic's kid is going to have something to say about that when they get to Big Ten.
I mean, maybe Auburn and Gonzaga aren't as good as we thought. Maybe it's just that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. All right, so to that point, so there's a couple of teams. I've got 7 teams, 4 that we're freaking out about, 3 that maybe should we buy in on them? They're off to good starts. I don't know. In our last 2 minutes, I'll start with the teams that we're freaking out about, and I think we'll just start with, Kentucky. I think Kentucky's a good example of eye test versus metrics because I am a pro metrics guy. I know you are too. And when you watch what Kentucky was doing in some of these games, holy smokes, you would look at this and go, well, they're top 12 on defense. No, I watched that Louisville game and I watched that Michigan State game. I watched a lazy team. I watched dudes that weren't closing out. I watched dudes that were losing their guys on ball screens on the baseline and all sorts of stuff. I don't know if he's going to, Mark Pope, get them together here and you mentioned it, we're recording it on Tuesday. We're going to watch him play North Carolina. But, dude, if this effort on defense doesn't get any better, I know a lot of people might be tempted at 22-1, but what the hell was that we have seen from this team?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, you look at a team like Memphis every year, right? They have all kinds of talent, but they're just not well coached. They just don't pay attention.
Lose at home to my Rebels. What the hell was that 2 weeks ago?
They just don't pay attention to the details. And if Kentucky's going to be that team, talent can only take you so far in the NCAA tournament because everybody's talented when you get down to the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. So, yeah, Kentucky's a team that really scares me. I think Florida's a team that will get it going in that 25-1 range. I think that's the team you would kind of isolate right now. But Todd Golden's got some work to do because Boogie Fland is not playing well at all for that team.
Yeah, Florida was the one that I thought I had a little bit more faith in because at the very least, right, these are only top 80 teams. But, it's like Florida State, Miami, Providence. They at least have some good showings against those teams. And then Arizona. I mean, Arizona looks like the real deal. I don't know about you, but they look legitimately good. And there's no shame in losing on a neutral to an Arizona team like that. So Well, we are up against it. Adam, buddy, I appreciate it. Last 30 seconds. Give us the spiel one more time. What do we got up at the website?
Yeah, VSiN.com/subscribe. Black Friday special. I know it's day after Cyber Monday, but still, Black Friday special. Now through May 1st, $60. All access pass, everything we do, AI player prop projections, all of our written content, everything. VSiN.com/subscribe.
Yep, check it out. Everything is up there and more. Our tools, they're absolutely great. We will be back here next week on Pod to the Futures. I've already booked our guest for next week. How about this? With Selection Sunday in the rearview mirror, by the time we come back, Tim Murray will be with us as long as Mitch Moss, and we'll get a good breakdown of what the bracket looks like and what you should be betting. So that's next week here on Pod to the Futures. We'll see you then.